I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the impact of European years, because I think we're all going to getting involved in any kind of campaign because we want to create an impact. And the next slide will just focus on some words that sprang to mind when I started to think a little bit about impact. So the first word I thought about was imagination. And I think we, especially maybe from the civil society sector, we talk a lot about money and grants and we need money for this and that. But even with infinite amounts of money put into any kind of campaign, without imagination, without an imaginative application of that money, then the actual impact of what we can achieve is quite limited. And I think it's quite telling that the budget for 2010, the EEC budget, was 17 million. And the budget for the European Year of Volunteering last year was only 11 million. But I think if you speak to people now about how they see the successes of 2011, it's much, much more than if you spoke to people at the beginning of 2011 about how they felt about 2010. So it's not just about money, it's about many, many other factors. The next word coming up there is media. And we already had a couple of mentions of media here, which is interesting in the light of the notes I made. I think one of the challenges that we had with EYV 2011 was, especially from the communication campaign from the European Commission, was the apparent more or less lack of use of modern media tools, Twitter, Facebook, these kind of instantaneous communication tools. And as I understood, and maybe Joachim can give a bit more information, but I think it was a difficulty with security issues and security of information issues about how well the Commission can use these kind of tools. And it's interesting that already for 2012, there already are some kind of official tweets about the year. So maybe that's also something that's changed. But certainly from 2011, we didn't see from the official communication campaign much, if any, use of social networks in the media. The next word I've got up there is potential. And I think undoubtedly for any European year, there is a lot of potential. And most of that potential comes from the opportunity that's given for different organisations and organisations from different sectors to work together, to pool resources and increase the potential that they have working together. So that's really quite important. And the next word I have there is action. What became very apparent during 2011 is that it's very important when you're involving different stakeholders, different organisations from different groups, be that civil society, governments at different levels, European institutions, is that the appropriate actions have to be assigned to the appropriate stakeholders. And that's not always as obvious as it seems. So that's something that really needs to be thought about, what the actions are that you want to do, and who or what is the appropriate stakeholder to take on board those actions. This brings me to the next letter and words, which is about common ownership. And I think one of the big successes of 2011 is that we did, during the year, create a sense of common ownership between the member states of the EU institutions, and civil society. It wasn't always like that, though. It wasn't really like that from the beginning. And there was a lack, really, of a bottom-up approach, at least from our perspective of civil society organisations, especially regarding the communication campaign, where something, for example, the tour was imposed from above. It was an idea that came from a central idea from the EU, but could not have happened without the collaboration of organisations and people at the grassroots. But they weren't involved from the very beginning. So this is something really to be aware of. And the last word I have there to finish is together. And despite what I've said about this lack of bottom-up approach for 2011, what did work really well was the way that the different stakeholders did work together as the year went on, and that's been strengthened even more. From the member state side, from the national coordinating bodies, from all the civil society organisations, the ones that became members of the Alliance, and others that chose not to become members of the Alliance but nevertheless were involved. And then also from the EU institution side. So any European year should now build on the example that we set for 2011 in terms of these different stakeholder groups working together and capitalising and maximising on, yes, limited budgets, yes, limited resources, but with all the stakeholders working for the same objectives, I think we can achieve quite a big impact And I think it's still early days to look really at the impact of 2011 and really assess it. But we are already seeing, especially in policy work and awareness, that we have managed to achieve an impact. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we weren't working together with the institutions and working together as different European networks active in volunteering.